Well, Mark, we're delighted to be with you today. Thank you for coming and for being such a great friend to the university. We're excited to learn about your career, your experience, and I think we all have a lot to learn from those things. I want to go back, though, to the beginning, though. You're from North Logan. Tell us a little bit about what you remember, perhaps a formative experience or two from your youth in North Logan.
So North Logan looked a lot different than it does now. Is this on?
I think your mic. Yep.
There we go. That better? Yeah. Okay. So North Logan looked a lot different. I remember we had a couple stop signs. That was about it. And I think there were 2,000 people that lived in the area, so pretty rural. My father was an accountant here at Utah State. My mother was a director of nursing at a nursing home, and I was just a typical kid growing up in the 70s, and Utah State was 3 miles up the hill. So when it came time to go to college, where do you want to go to college? Oh, I don't know, how about 3 miles away?
So you worked some blue-collar jobs early on in life. Tell us a little bit about the types of jobs that you experienced and how those experiences informed how you grew from there.
All right, so my first job was when I was about 14. I was picking strawberries in a field. So I'd show up at 5:30 every morning, and even though it was summer, your fingers would freeze while you're picking the berries. And at first it was a good idea to sample some of what you were picking, but that kind of gets old after a while. And I picked apples, I pumped people's gas at a couple service stations, did light mechanic duty, worked at I don't know if Del Monte's still here, but I worked at 2 summers at their facilities, driving forklift and running the big cooker operations. I had jobs at department stores. I stocked shelves at grocery stores, including when I was at Utah State, I was bagging groceries where I ran into my high school teacher who seemed disappointed that that's what I was doing, because it had been 3-4 years since I'd left high school. She's like, oh, okay, so you're bagging my groceries, great.
So it's been a journey from those types of jobs to a senior vice president at Honeywell over HR and communications and security. But how were those experiences helpful?
Well, I think you don't appreciate it at the time. Most of you that have had experiences like that, if I say, wow, and you had such great bosses the whole time, didn't you? And everybody laughs, because some of their worst experiences were when you were working those kind of jobs and you're being mistreated and that sort of thing. There's actually something to that, though, because you learn to have a little bit of humility. And look, if you want the job, you're going to just have to keep your mouth closed and do what they're asking you to, assuming it's not some unethical thing. But you learn to deal with hostile customers where it's not really your fault, but you can't engage in a big argument with them. And I just think you develop a lot of life skills of dealing with people, of building a little resilience, and learning that that's what you need to do if you're going to keep a job. And then that comes into play later when you're in a professional job, because even though it's a professional job, you'll have bosses that aren't the greatest. You're going to have to deal with angry customers or other clients that aren't the greatest. And you can't just lash out and react in the moment. So I really think there's something to having those kind of jobs. We actually discovered at Honeywell for our marketing and business development jobs, we were hiring in people from Ivy League schools, and they were coming directly out of McKinsey or other big consulting practices, and they, very articulate, very smart, seemed terrific. And we had about a decade of they would either be wildly successful or they would totally implode, get fired or quit in disgust sort of thing. And we couldn't figure out what was the difference as we looked at them, because they all had very similar backgrounds. So we did some statistical analysis, some predictive analytics on it, and broke down their backgrounds using formulas. And nothing correlated very strongly except for one thing. And it had a almost perfect correlation. And it was what we're talking about. It was, had they ever had a blue-collar experience? Or had they always just, been fed with the silver spoon and never really had that sort of experience? And the one that we thought didn't match that actually had been in the military. And anybody who's been in the military, it's not like a do-what-you-want sort of thing. It's give me another 100 push-ups and clean the latrine. And those were the people that were wildly successful at Honeywell. Now, that may not be true for other companies or other disciplines, but it certainly was for that one. People who were willing to not say, oh, I don't do Windows. Oh, no, I only do strategy. I don't do what it is you want me to do. And that was the difference between those that were successful and those that weren't. So even though a lot of the jobs were challenging, I think it helps build resilience and a certain level of character in people.
Yeah, I think that resonates with a number of our students who may be experiencing blue-collar jobs and not seeing how it might pan out, how it might be helpful. So thank you for sharing that. Let's go to your decision for what you studied here at Utah State. At one point, at least momentarily, you were thinking about business education as opposed to business administration. Tell us a little about that and why you chose what you did.
You know, I probably should have kept that fact hidden, but so what happened is I was here in the days before the computers or the internet, before Al Gore, whoever invented it. So what you had to do is you showed up as a student, and there was no electronic sign-up. It was all a bunch of cards. You had a card for a class you wanted, and you stood in a line with 120 kids, waiting your turn for an hour and a half to get up there to see if the class was full and if you could get into that. And if not, you had to get out of line and go to a different line or rearrange your schedule, and you literally spent all day trying to register for your classes from line to line. Well, as a freshman, the first thing they did is you had to pick a major. You had to declare a major, and it worked the same way, standing in line. So I showed up, and I thought, I don't know what I want to do. No jobs sound fun. All the jobs I'd had, I thought, I don't want to do that for 40 years. So I didn't know what to do, but I thought I better get a college education or I'll be picking strawberries forever. So I looked around, and there were two signs for business. And one said business administration, and one said business education. So I thought, what's the difference? I thought, administration, that sounds kind of clerical and boring, and I need a business education. And besides, there's a big long line at business administration, and there's nobody in the business education line. So I went up to that table, and there were two sweet little ladies with the beehive hairdos sitting there. And right away, I knew there was a problem because one of them said, wow, we never get men in this major. And so I said, oh, is this not the business administration line? And they said, no, honey, that's the one right over here. And there's these huge signs. And I'm going, oh, okay. So that's how I picked my major.
So once you dialed in the major, you found a sweetheart here, and you had some formative experiences as well. Tell us a little about how your education at Utah State prepared you for your future work.
Okay. So I attended a year here at Utah State, mostly general education. Then I went on a 2-year LDS mission, and while I was there, I decided that I was going to transfer to, how do you say it, that school to the south. And so, but my father was an accountant here, and again, there are no computers invented yet, and so I kept saying, send me the application, and of course he didn't. He just kept conveniently forgetting for like 9 months. And so I came back and re-enrolled here, and started doing a little dating, and met a girl, but I got accepted as a transfer student down south, so I went down there for a semester, but it was too late. I'd already decided I was in love, and we were going to get married, and so we had a quick conversation that went like this. She said, gee, I'm in special ed at Utah State. I have a 4-year scholarship, and they pay me 4 years worth of stipend to attend. And what do you have? Nothing. So I transferred back up to Utah State, and then I thought, well, now I got to pick a major. And my father being an accountant, I'd visited him in his office when I was 8 or 9 years old. Dad, what do you do? And he said, oh, it's so exciting. And he had a little adding machine with a paper roll on it. And he had a big book that was a January ledger, like this thick, and it said January on it. And he's like, I check all the numbers in here and, make corrections and run down errors. And then in February, I get to move to this book, which looks like the other one, but it says February. And I make my way. And so I said, Dad, this is like the most boring job in the world. And he laughed, and he said, well, like, what would you want to do? What sounds exciting? And I thought about it a minute, and I said, the garbage man. You get to ride on the truck in the open air. Nobody yells at you for it. And so he laughed. But I had that was my view of an accountant. So when I started taking classes, guess what comes easy to me? accounting and finance, but I was resisting the force because I didn't want to be in that situation. And I was interested in human resources because I thought, well, I want to be able to work with people and see if you can get a lot of value out of it. And so I thought that sounds fun, but I didn't feel like I fit very well at the time. HR was a lot different back then. It was actually called personnel. We lobbied the business leadership to change it to human resources, and we were soundly defeated. So they left it as personnel. But I didn't feel like I fit very well because it was super touchy-feely. And we'd get in class, and they looked at me like I was an ogre because they would ask questions like, they'd say, look, if somebody's not working out well at a job, like whose fault is that and what should you do about it? And the HR students would all go, oh, it's the company's fault. Yep, they're just not training the people well enough. And I'd worked these blue-collar jobs, and I was thinking of Bob and Chuck and Ed, and I don't think that was their problem, was enough training. So I just didn't feel like I fit. And at the time, the HR professors were saying, why are you taking finance and accounting? You're going to waste yourself. You're just going to be a bean counter in the back room somewhere, all isolated with them slipping pizza under the door. And the finance professor said, what are you doing in HR? It's touchy-feely, and you're going to be poor. So nobody said, wow, maybe it's like a Reese's peanut butter cup, and you could merge this together. So I just kind of wandered into it, and I would have had to stay another semester to have a dual major in finance and HR. So at the last minute, I picked HR just because I thought, yeah, I'll give it a try instead of doing one more semester.
A number of ways you were ahead of your time, the synthesis of HR and data-driven
Yeah,
decision-making.
I'd like to claim it was a great design and I had foresight, but it was just me kind of stumbling along.
Yeah. Well, talk a little about that, the continuation of that path. Once you graduated, you worked for a number of different companies. What did you learn about what it takes to successfully navigate an early career?
Yeah, so at the time they said you really need a master's degree in HR. And I wasn't sure I wanted to be a business person. And again, I didn't have the advantage of the internet or really a lot of people to talk to. And I was in a restaurant and I saw a guy in a white shirt and a tie, and it was 9 at night, and he just looked miserable. And there's a businessman, and he was sweating, and he just looked miserable. And I remember looking at him thinking, oh, that'll be me if I go into. So I don't want to do that. And so I said I should do something that contributes to the greater good, like be a city manager. So I went to get a master's in public administration instead of business administration, thinking I'm going to do city management. And I applied to the school down south and to the University of Utah, and the school down south said, your grades are okay, you probably should take the GMAT again. And the University of Utah said, hey, you're a slam dunk. And then my wife got a job teaching 2 miles from the U. So I went there to get the master's. And I got to tell you, though, I graduated with good grades, and this is to give some of you hope, but I was keeping a little spreadsheet. I literally went 0 for 87 trying to get a job in the state of Utah. I got about 5 interviews, but I applied for 87 different jobs and got turned down. I went 4 or 5 months with nothing, with no job. I was thinking I'm going to have to go back and be an engineer or something. And then I finally got the first offer. And once I got one offer, I wasn't doing anything different in my interviewing or approach. Once I got the first offer, people would go, oh, is there anything else you're considering? Oh, yeah, I just got an offer yesterday. Oh, well, we'll give you one too. And then I went 7 for 7. So 0 for 87 and then 7 for 7. And one was in procurement, 2 of them were in city management, and the others were in human resources. So I was forced at that point to make a choice. And so I chose to go into HR with AT&T. I wanted to pick a big brand name, Fortune 100, just to get that credibility of an early start into human resources.
So AT&T, iOmega, Honeywell, looking back, what lessons did you learn about when and how to pivot in your career?
Yeah, I would say, you make a decision about whether you're going to stay somewhere or whether you're going to go. And if you're making a decision to stay because you're fearful, you're probably making the wrong decision. You're fearful of the unknown, afraid to make a change. Then you're kind of like the proverbial frog in the warm water where, hey, it's okay, it's not great, I think I'll just stay here in the water. And I ran into too many people, including relatives, where they regretted that. They'd worked at the same place, they felt like they were under challenged, doing the same job over and over again, and they would complain about it. And I'd always say, well, why don't you switch jobs? I mean, if you dislike it so much. oh, I don't want to disrupt my family. I don't want to. And so they were just kind of miserable for 30 or 40 years. And not that I'm a big philosopher, but I remember a saying from Thoreau that said, most men live lives of quiet desperation. And that really rung clear with me of I didn't want to be in that position where I looked back later and thought, I didn't dare try anything, and I just kind of underdid it, and it just didn't turn out the way I wanted. So I wanted to have a little courage to try something new. I didn't want to be a hopper where you're just running around every 12 months to something new. And I took a different path than my colleagues I graduated with. Most of them just took the ladder straight up route. So, oh, you're doing a really good job. We're going to give you a big raise. You're doing a really good job. Let's make you the manager of the group. You're doing a good job. Let's make you the director of the group. And almost without exception, by the time you get to about 15 years, those people become bored at what it is they're doing. It's like trying to turn your kid into a tennis star. So you make them do tennis 7/24, and what happens when they turn age 13 or 14? Hate tennis, don't want to do this anymore, hate you for making me do tennis. And that's what happens in people's careers. If it's too narrow, you think it's what you want to do, and then after 15 years, you're bored out of your mind. And so I took laterals while they were taking promotions, and I'm pretty sure everybody was making more money than me in the first 10 years out of school. But I took laterals, and not always stuff I wanted to do. It was just something that I knew I didn't know about. I don't really know about this area. So I think I need to go over and spend a couple of years so I really understand it, so that later on I don't have these big blind spots. And then the second decade, it flipped. I always was the one getting picked for the job because they were really deep here but didn't know about these things, and I knew something about everything, so it was a broader foundation. So at the time, I wasn't sure it was the right strategy because everybody else seemed to be getting ahead in titles and pay, but then that totally reversed later on and paid off. And if you're going to lead anything, it's not good if you have a big blind spot in a certain aspect of what you're leading, because you're going to make wrong decisions or you're going to over-rely on whoever your expert is on that area because you don't really know when to question what they're telling you. And you can wind up losing your job later because you endorsed a bad decision. And I just didn't want to have a big blind spot and have to over-rely on somebody.
Yeah, I think it's clear that your strong sense of curiosity, your desire to learn and adapt has helped you along the way and given you a strong set of expertise by which you can manage across the enterprise. Fast forward now to your role today at Honeywell. There's some theories floating out there. You travel extensively. No one's really sure what you're doing internationally. You were in close proximity, I think, when Bin Laden was killed. Tell us exactly what you do.
Yeah, okay. So most of you at least have some idea of what human resources is, but when I tried to explain it to my parents, remember when I went through, it was personnel, it wasn't HR. So when they were working, there wasn't even personnel, right? And so they kept saying, no, what do you do again? And I'd say, hire people, sometimes have to fire people, decide how much they get paid. Everybody's with me to that point. And then I start getting into, global strategies and workforce planning and organizational development and efficiency, and everybody's eyes glaze over. And finally, about the third time I was explaining it to my father, he looked at me and said, I know I keep asking you what you do, and you keep explaining it. And he goes, I just don't get it. And I can't believe how much money they pay you for doing whatever that is. So just don't mess it up. And then my mother interrupted and said, no, you don't understand. They've just discovered what a nice boy he is. So that was their view, of what I do. And then I've got 4 kids. They're all out of the house now. But when they were little, they would always say, Dad, where are you going? And it was never Paris and London. It was Uzbekistan and some remote part of Indonesia or whatever, places they had to look up. And, well, what are you doing there? And I'd try to explain it, but their little eyes would glaze over pretty quick. And so I'd just say, oh, I'm just checking in on the business there. And that's all I'd say. Yeah, we're just checking in on the business. Okay. And so I came home from a couple things. One is I was doing something at a university where my oldest daughter was a freshman, and she came in even though she wasn't a business student and sat at the back. They did an introduction of me and mentioned that I was a Six Sigma black belt. And so she came up after and she said, Dad, when did you have time to learn martial arts? Okay, so she doesn't know what I do. And then my oldest son, I was walking through the house one day and I heard him in the other room on the phone, and he had his friend on the speakerphone so he could still keep doing his computer game. And he didn't know I was there. And I heard the friend ask him, "Are you rich?" And there's a pause, and I stopped to see what he's going to say. He goes, "Well," he goes, "I'm not, but my dad is, but he won't give me any of it." That's all you need to know. And then number 3 is probably the kicker. He's another boy, and he's maybe 11 or 12 years old, and I come home from a business trip, and there he is in the hallway with his 2 little 12-year-old buddies, and they've all got their hands on their hips blocking the hallway, a little row of the 3 of them. So I stop, and, "Hey, what's up, guys?" And they all look at each other, and then my son as the spokesman goes, "Dad, we know what you do." And I go, "Okay, so what do I do?" And they look at each other. "You're with the CIA." So I laugh and I go, no, I'm not with the CIA. I'm an HR person at Honeywell. I'm not with the CIA. And they look at each other. "Yeah, we knew you'd say that." So then you fast forward a few years, and I'm on a business trip, and I'm going to call home, say hi to the family, and I realize the timing works out, and so I call, and the same son answers the phone. He's 16 or 17. And I've got the TV on in the hotel room, and I see them pulling Osama bin Laden out of the hole. They found him, and they're dragging him out. And so I go, "Hey, did you see they found Osama?" And he goes, yeah, I saw that, Dad." And it's quiet for a minute, and he goes, "Dad, where are you?" And I go, I hadn't thought about it. And I go, "I'm about 250 miles from where they found him." And it's quiet, and he goes, I knew you'd be in the vicinity." So I'm not sure today if he's really, I think he's still just not quite sure if that's what I really do.
Well, thanks for clearing the air. Tell us, because Honeywell is largely business to business, help our students understand a little bit about what Honeywell does, what product categories it plays in.
Okay, so pretty much everybody's heard of Honeywell. Usually when you say, "Well, what do they do?" people aren't sure, but they usually think of the thermostats, because we invented the little round thermostat. And Honeywell thermostats are actually still number 1 in the world in terms of total placement. We don't actually own those anymore, though. We spun it off as its own company. So what we do own, our biggest business is our aerospace business, and it's about $14 billion. About $5 billion of it is defense and space related. The way to think of it is any aircraft of any size made by anyone, anywhere in the world, we have content on it. So we do everything but the outer shell and the seats, but all the avionics, controls, mechanical things, engines, the climate in the cabinet, emergency type stuff. We do all of that. And in the space program, everything NASA's ever put into orbit, those are our controls that they've used, and we've never caused a mission failure. We've got all kinds of interesting stuff. If it's a missile that you work off a little laptop and it goes around corners and up and down, we're the only company in the world that makes those guidance systems that can't be jammed by anything because they don't rely on satellites. So we've got a lot of kind of cool stuff in the aerospace sector. We also have another big business that's about $12 billion, which is a chemicals business, our performance materials technology. About 75% of you are wearing our product today. You just don't know it. It's what makes clothes more resilient. It's a chemical that makes it so they don't quite wear through so fast. When you washed your clothes or washed your dishes, there's an 85% chance that was our process that was used to make that detergent. If you get gas anywhere in the world, there's a 75% chance they used our processing technology to turn it from the sludge into the gas and oil. Blister packs for medication, good chance that was our blister pack that you used. Hopefully it was approved medication that you took. And we do controls for whether it's a big refinery or any other kind of a factory type setting. We do process control. Then we have a third business that is our safety and productivity solutions. So think of the U.S. Postal Service or UPS, the handheld scanners that they're using. Those are ours. So it's ruggedized type scanning equipment, safety equipment, firefighter turnout gear, fall protection, people working on bridges that are attached with harnesses and so forth. We're in that business. Specialty gloves that don't melt under high heat, things like that. When you order Amazon or somewhere else and you don't think too much about how the package shows up at your house, We're a major provider to Amazon and to others for their automation in their warehouse, where you don't need the people. It just the automatically packages sort, and they move so fast it's a blur. And so when they say things like, we're going to deliver to you even faster, that's music to our ears, because that's not going to happen through tripling people. That's going to happen through adding in more automation. So that's been a great business for us. And then we're in the buildings technologies business, everything in buildings, fire, security, heating and cooling. We do that as well.
You've been around for 111 years. Just this
I
year.
haven't, but
You
they
haven't
have.
been. Honeywell has, which is remarkable. And the stock price has gone up 28%, twice the average. Jeff Bezos even admits that Amazon may not be around forever. To what do you attribute the longevity and the success of Honeywell?
HR, no. It's adaptability. I mean, we're one of the 12% of companies from the original 500. We're one of the 12, and we were actually in the Fortune 100 back then. So we've been able to maintain a strong positioning, but we don't look anything like we did back then. Almost nothing in the portfolio is the same. We average 8 acquisitions and 5 divestitures every year for the last 15 years. So we're continually changing our portfolio. We keep things where they're profitable, they're in a mass trend. In other words, there's going to be more people, not fewer people, that want whatever it is, and where there are barriers to entry, where it's hard to compete with us. Somebody in their garage is not going to be able to compete with us in most cases. There's just significant barriers to entry, either technical knowledge or ability to get approvals from governing agencies. And so we tend to play in those spaces. And anytime anything becomes more of a commodity, that's something that we sell, even if there's still a lot of demand for it. When the brand no longer matters, that's something we sell. So an example would be, not that long ago, we were into automotive. We owned brands like Fram, Prestone, Autolite. When I was a kid, everybody worked on your own car. You bought a car for $1,000 from somebody, and you did your own oil changes. And it mattered when you went down to get spark plugs or an oil filter. You didn't want the cheap generic one. You didn't trust it. You wanted the brand name. Where now almost no one does that. What do? You go to Jiffy Lube or some other equivalent place, and you pull in, and they come out and tell you, oh, your air filter's dirty. See, you need a new one. It'll be $39.95. Do you want one or not? And that's the decision you make. You don't go, oh, is that a Fram? Because I want a Fram. And so those are businesses that, well, they're still profitable. We sell them, or we spin them off, or we get out of that, even though it's not a bad business at all. It's just more in the commodity area. And that's really, over the years, how that strategy's enabled us to survive. We have a performance culture, so we reward our best people more than they're going to get rewarded at another company. And then we also, if someone's not performing well, we tend to let that person go so that they can go to a career somewhere else where they'll be a better fit and can still have a successful career. And so it's that combination of our portfolio management, what we choose to be in, and then the execution of that with the talent we have.
Talk a little bit more about mergers and acquisitions. It seems to be a strong competency at Honeywell. What's your unique approach to divesting and acquire businesses?
Yeah, so my frame of reference are other places that I worked, and how it usually would work at those places is a business would fall in love with something. They'd say, we need a strategy. Oh, we have a hole in our strategy over here. Here's something we don't have, so we have to go acquire a company in that space to complete ourselves, and then we'll cross-sell we'll get a bunch of sales synergies by acquiring this. We'll sell their stuff, and they'll sell our stuff, and the world will be great. And then they fall in love with it too. So then as the bidding goes up for this particular property, they got to have it at all costs, because now they've been pursuing this for 8 months. They've fallen in love with it. They don't have a plan B, and they're going to pay whatever it takes to, it becomes competitive to beat out whoever else is bidding on it to win it. And you do a bit of reviewing of it then, and then you buy it, and then you're kind of done reviewing it, and you just hope it all works out. That's kind of how it worked at most places. And so that's why the average success on an acquisition is about 35% to get your money's worth back out of it. And we used to be like that 20 years ago. That was our success rate when we actually looked at it. Our success rate's well over 90% now, because we made some pretty significant changes. And usually you'll notice when one company announces they're buying another company, what happens to the stock price of the two companies? the target usually goes up because people are thinking, wow, it's going to be better now. What happens to the stock price of the company doing the buying usually? Drops. Why? Because they're afraid you're wasting the money and it's going to distract you and be disruptive and you're not going to get out of it what you think you're going to get out of it. Now when we go to buy something, we get encouraged by analysts and by shareholders. They're like, can't you guys buy more stuff? And our stock price doesn't drop when we announce that we're going to do something. In fact, it usually goes up because they have a confidence that we're going to get our money's worth out of this. So, we do a few things. One is more frequent reviews. So we regularly sit down and we'll look at a couple hundred companies that we're looking at in all different stages. And so we'll look at it a year ahead of time. We'll look at it 6 months, 3 months, 90 days, 60 days, 30 days when we buy it. And then after we buy it, 30, 60, 90, 180, 360. And the effect of having all those reviews, if you're the one involved in doing it, you don't like coming into the meeting and having the boss ask you 6 things you don't know about that property. So you run and get those answers, and then you start getting smart and say, the boss is going to ask a bunch of other questions. What else is he or she going to ask me about this? So you do your homework ahead of time, and now you're prepared for 18 different things. And you meet again, and they still come up with 3 or 4 more. And so the net effect of that is we dig much deeper than most companies do to truly understand what's going on with their customers, with their products, what are the risks, how do we mitigate those. And then we avoid falling in love with a deal. The people bringing the deal aren't the people that decide if we're going to do that or not, because they're all passionate about it and in love at that point. So we have an independent group of executives that includes myself that take a look at, is this something we want to do or not? And instead of just bringing forward one deal you've worked on for 8 months and then getting rejected and having hard feelings about it, bring forward 20 deals and maybe we'll decide to pursue 2 of them. So we still reject 18 of them, but these 2 we go after. And so it's just really, it's a different way of, and then you gotta pick the right things and you gotta not pay too much. So we walk away from a lot of deals where the bidding just gets too high. And so we'll just walk away from it. And it's having that discipline to walk away from something that you really think you want to do and have fallen in love with. And that's made all the difference because we just don't overpay for the things that we buy. And we've really done our due diligence to make sure the things we do buy are going to return the profit, not just rely on sales synergies, but make sure we've got the cost synergies. And anything we can get on sales synergies is just a bonus, not a must-have. And so we're not perfect at it, but we're much better than we used to be.
And some of that success is also attributed to your global perspective, your ability to adapt to local culture. You're in 70 plus different countries, 110,000 employees throughout the world. Tell us a little bit about what it means to understand the importance of understanding local culture and adapt to local culture in the businesses that you oversee.
So a couple things. If we take China, for example, when I started at Honeywell, we had a little under 100 million in business there a year, and now we've got 4 billion in business. And the local Chinese papers will say things like Honeywell, one of the few multinationals that truly gets China. So part of it is, if we go there to do a business review and you look around the table, all the faces are Chinese. We're not bringing in people from America and from Europe, and we've hired locals to lead our business there. And then the other is doing everything locally. So we design there, we source there, we manufacture there, we sell there. And that's not just China, but we have that same sort of a localized strategy everywhere. And that helps you be a lot more global. And then the other thing you might find a little interesting, which is non-HR, maybe non-PC here, is just our approach to things. Because yes, it's important to understand all the cultures are different and you want to understand the nuances and how do you do business in particular cultures. But a lot of companies make the mistake of being overly sensitized to it and they try to adapt to each and every country and just embrace exactly what the culture is. That's a really good way to be very average because you're embracing the average there. So when we first came into a significant Asian country, about 20 years ago, and I remember the CEO saying, hey, we're a performance culture company and a compensation differentiation, which means if you perform really well, you're going to get bigger pay increases with us than you're going to get elsewhere. And if you don't, we'll ask you to leave, sort of thing. And some of the management there raised their hand and said, well, you don't understand. That's not going to work here in this culture. We're all about, respecting your elders. It's all about seniority that matters. And it's about how many years you have. And so, you wouldn't pay someone more money because they're a better performer if they're not as senior and as seasoned. So you guys are going to have to adopt a different strategy here in our country. And our CEO said, well, let me ask you a few questions. He said, okay, so how many people do we have here? And at the time it was like 500. What's the turnover? That's 10%. Okay, so if I'm only replacing the people I have here, every year I'm going to need to hire 50 people here, right? Yep. How many people in the workforce here? Oh, about 1 billion. Okay. And is everyone exactly the same? You all hold the exact same political views. You all feel exactly the same about everything. Well, no, people are people. I mean, there's certain things that tend to be common, but no, we're not all exactly the same. Everybody's different. Well, okay, find me the 50 people that think like us. You got 1 billion people to choose from. And everybody was kind of taken back. But I got to tell you, that's been the key to our success, because we found people who just viewed it differently. And they felt like, look, if I do a really good job and work hard, I should get ahead. And if someone else isn't, there should be some accountability there. They shouldn't just be able to so find us those people. And that's been the key to our success. So we're aware of the culture and how you need to do meetings and whether it's relationship-based or not. But the fundamental thing is we don't adopt ourselves to be completely average in there. Instead, it's find the people in that culture who view it like we do, and those are the people that we want to hire.
I think you've expanded some of our students' understanding of what the HR profession does. Certainly your involvement in M&A and entering new countries is helping us understand what possibilities exist. More traditionally speaking, as it relates to HR responsibilities, you've been involved in selecting and developing talent to a great degree. What have you learned about what it takes to select talent, to select someone who's a good fit for the role, who's going to be successful in that role?
Yeah, so it's going to vary by company. Companies that don't understand who they are have a hard time hiring people because they're just trying to appeal to everybody. Oh, we want everybody to work for us, and we're just going to go out there and try to get the best people we can. That's like a really bad strategy. You'll wind up with multiple cultures and lots of disagreements on how you should handle things. So it's really important to understand the company culture, which isn't necessarily what a CEO says it is. It's what actually happens. What do people actually do when someone isn't watching them? And then you've got to be able to embrace that and say, hey, this is us. This is the way we do things. And there are pluses and minuses to it. And some people are going to think, that's awesome, that's me. And other people are going to think, well, no, that's not really for me. And so it's important both as a company and as an individual that you understand that about yourself. So for example, in some cultures, if you look at our company, we have 8 behaviors. And those 8 behaviors are fairly aggressive behaviors about showing courage and pushing on things. And so that's what's going to get rewarded and promoted. So if you're a person who doesn't like to really do that, you just don't want to push the envelope or do those sorts of things, it's not going to work out very well because we'll always be saying, hey, you're not being pushy enough. You let a deadline slip because somebody wouldn't give you something on time, and you should have escalated that and made sure you got it rather than just saying, oh, Mary didn't provide it to me, sort of thing. Where in other company cultures, if you take that approach, you'll get chastised for it. If you're in a culture where it's super collaborative, all about teamwork, all about building consensus, and you're in there challenging colleagues' ideas on strategy and making everybody uncomfortable in the room, and even though you might totally be right, we need to air this and have a real discussion, not a rude one, but just a real discussion about the facts, you're probably going to get dinged on your performance review, saying, some of your colleagues, you could work a little bit better with them, you don't always show teamwork. And so it's important to know the fit and to know, so we try to select for that. And we've gotten big into assessments for everybody, including senior executives, where they have to sit down and do, you'd think of it as a business simulation. We pick something they probably don't know anything about and say, how would you handle this particular situation? Here's some facts, what are the things you'd think about? And then they get scored on strategic ability, execution, ability to drive change. We do cognitive testing too, how big is the motor this person has in terms of smarts. And then now we're implementing something for our 8 behaviors too, to be able to get a good read on that. So, because we need people who are going to fit into the culture. We want diversity, we want tons of diverse thoughts, that's why the behaviors read like they do. But we need people who think about the world that way in order to drive it forward. So yeah, the selection's super important, and it's a mistake to just rely on an interview with somebody, because the people who get fired a lot are often the greatest interviewers because they have way more practice than everybody else. And so they sound really good. And then you hire them and you're really disappointed, because they sounded so good. And sometimes the very best people just don't interview that well because they always have a job. And then you've asked them to interview for something and they have to dust off their resume, and they're a little bit cold in the interview, and it's just a bad way to. Interviews are still important, but it's a bad way to base something on. So we try to introduce more less subjective type measurements as well.
You gained a name for yourself selecting talent by asking one question in an interview, though, by helping people see whether or not they were self-aware. Do you recall that question? Tell me about how people would view you from different perspectives.
Yeah, so this will be a cheat sheet for any of you that ever wind up interviewing with me. But I ask a variety of questions, but one of them I want to really get at is self-awareness, because I've learned there's a strong correlation at our company anyway between how self-aware you are and how successful you're going to be. And so when you interview with me, I ask you a few questions, and most of them are positively worded, so you think it's a positive question. But what I'm doing is I'm digging for 8 negatives about yourself. And you'll only recognize a couple of the questions as asking for a negative. You think I'm asking for a positive the way I word it, but I'm looking for 8 negatives. And the reason I do that is everybody's prepared with one negative. What's your weakness? I work too hard. I set such a demanding bar for my subordinates. So those 2 answers don't count, by the way, because that's what people have practiced. And oh yeah, it's awesome. And you try it out on your significant other. Yeah, that's a great answer. It's a strength, disguised as a weakness. And so the first one you're ready with. When I ask for the second one, you're usually ready with that because that was your alternate. That was something else you thought of, but you decided not to do that one. When I ask for the third one, all of a sudden it's getting harder because half of you didn't think of 3. You only thought of 1 or 2. And I ask for a 4th one and a 5th one, and now one of 2 things happens. I either get the truth, because we sit there in silence till you answer. So you're going to tell me the truth about what your weaknesses are, or you go quiet on me. Okay? That's a problem. Because if you go quiet on me, it's one of 2 things. Number 1, you're lying because you're afraid if you tell the truth, you won't get hired, which means when I hire you and you're in a pressure situation, you're going to lie about what's happening and how it's going and what's going on, because you're not going to tell the truth if it's going to make you look bad. And if you can't think of anything, and I literally have had people not be able to think of more than 1 or 2 things, I will not hire you for the job because you won't make it, because it's one of 2 things again. It's either you're lying or you truly think you don't have weaknesses. And guess who's going to get blamed every time something goes wrong? It's not going to be you. You're going to blame it on somebody else. Peers, subordinates, bosses. It's always someone else. Who wants to work with that person who never thinks it's their fault? And so what we're looking for is someone who can just say, because they've thought about it, and they're like, yeah, you know what, I'm not very good at this, or at this, or at this. Here's what I'm trying to do to overcome that. I either hire people around me and listen to them that are good at it, or I've been trying to practice public speaking so that I can improve that. I try to not be as obnoxious with my coworkers. They've thought about it. They tell you what it is. They're real things, not I work too hard sort of thing. They're real things, and they're trying to fix them. So they're willing. That's the person you want to work with, because when you're talking to them about what should we do, how's it going, they're going to tell you the truth. Here's what's going well, here's what's not going well, here's what we're trying to do, what do you think? Those are the kind of people you want to hire, and that's why the self-awareness matters so much. And I know all of you can probably think of someone you've been around or that you've worked for that wasn't very self-aware, and it's just miserable because they never take ownership for anything, and they blame you for everything. So it's my way of finding out who those people are.
In recent years, you've found success recruiting here at Utah State. I know Dave Patel visited with you some years ago, and you said we recruit from 5 schools, and Dave said we'll be number 6. And we, after a short order, we made it into the rotation. Tell us a little about why Utah State, what you find in recruits here at Utah State.
Yeah, I think that some of you coined the phrase, but it's like a blue-collar work ethic with a professional knowledge and experience. And that's really what it is, because at Honeywell, it doesn't work very well to come in and say, I'm really smart, and gee, I just got out of my really smart MBA school, so where's the CEO so I can tell him how to correct the strategy? You know, oh, I don't think that's going to happen. So we're looking more for people who come in and say, how can I help? What can I do here? I'm eager, I'm willing to go. What do you need done? This that's strategic, great. This that's tactical, I'm on it. Being able to do both instead of saying, oh no, I don't do that. I went to all this schooling and I'm at such a high level that other people, the little people do that. I do this. Those people don't do well at Honeywell. And Utah State, from people's background and upbringing and the experiences you have, and a lot more of the students here have actually had blue-collar jobs than at certain other places, you're just more willing to do that. It's like I can say, hey, I'm a senior executive and I've been in this job for 12 years, so I'm only going to do, if my boss says, hey, we need you to take the garbage can out at night because we cut back on the janitorial staff, I'm not going to go, what? That's beneath me. I need to hire someone to, no, I'm just going to take the garbage out, because guess what? I took lots of garbage out before, and I'm still getting paid the same amount whether I'm taking out the garbage or do.
You wanted to be a garbage man at one point.
I did, and I am. No. So, but the point is just having that attitude of like, how can I help here? It's not like you're just only going to do certain things and not do other things. Because people value that. When they've got something that keeps them awake at night and you're able to help, even if it's not in your area of expertise, and you at least try to help, you get points for that. Because they think, wow, he or she is trying to help me make something happen that matters, rather than just you're in it for yourself, you're a puppet of someone else, you're just trying to promote your own career sort of thing. And then you just get bigger and better assignments, because people say, you were helpful on this and this, maybe you can help us with this too. And that's what we get out of Utah State students is you're not fearful and afraid to try, but you're not like all arrogant and I don't do this and I have 25 offers, what can you do for me sort of thing. So it's just really important that you stay hungry, and you've been getting more success, and as you continue to get more success, that's one of the hardest things. When you ask our CEO what he worries about the most, he'll tell you it's losing our hunger. We've been in the top quartile of performance for industrials for a decade and a half. We just moved into the number 1 in the highest earnings multiple of any industrial company. And it's easy to say, oh, well, we're good. We're undefeated. We're good. We don't need to practice as hard. We don't need to worry about the next team coming up. And that's the biggest danger, is that you just become complacent and then you lose what got you there. So we work really hard on try to hire the right people, try to keep people hungry, focus a lot on all the broken things and how we're going to fix them, instead of saying, oh, we're world class, this is really good.
Well, I know we want to make some time for student questions. We're going to open it up for to hear from a few of you. If you would stand up, introduce yourself, and ask your question. Jordan's got a roaming mic.
Got 2 of them. Levi, thank you. What do we got? Questions? Aaron?
Aaron Oborn. Mark, where do you see the future of HR going?
It's a really good question, and if I look at the last 20 or 30 years, most functions have become more contemporary. Finance, IT, legal, they kind of evolved. I mean, there's a little bit of separation, but they kind of evolve. HR is like this big distribution still. There's HR on one end where it's very strategic, it reports to the CEO, you're involved in really important strategic decisions, and you have weight. And then there's all the way back over to just like it's 1950 again, where, look, I just need you to get people's paychecks right, resolve their personality disputes. You're not going to be in any of the important meetings. We'll tell you, though, if we need you to do something that comes out of one of the important meetings. And then there's everything in between. And it's just, of all the different areas in business, it's still the most scattered. So it really, those of you interested in HR, it really does matter where you go to work. A lot of places, HR still doesn't report into the CEO. It usually reports into the CFO because they don't trust that you have any business acumen and you're going to overspend like crazy trying to do things that make people happy. So they want the CFO to control the purse strings. Or they have it report into the general counsel because they view it as, oh, it's a legal issue. There's employment laws and things we have. So let the lawyer manage it, sort of thing. And you're going to get a vastly different HR experience when you're looked at one way versus another way. Now that being said, everybody's going to say, oh, I want to be at the strategic, highly visible. Well, with that comes a lot more accountability too. You're a lot more likely to not do well or to be let go in that environment where there are high expectations than in an environment where there's low expectations. I always say it's like the difference between playing for I have a couple people from here, so I love to say it, but the Toledo Mud Hens or the Yankees or the Dodgers. I mean, there's a difference, and they might tolerate you striking out more when the Mud Hens, and nobody's going to really know you did anyway, other than the Toledo people. But everybody knows if you strike out 3 times on television with the Yankees or the Dodgers, and there's more pressure to replace them with that. So that's kind of how it works in the HR continuum. You get paid a lot less, and you're less respected, but it's safer, down here. And up here, you're going to get paid a lot more because a lot more is expected. But if you don't step up and deliver, you're less likely to keep your position because they're really counting on you for a lot more. And I think it'll just continue to evolve. I think you'll see this part of the spectrum getting outsourced completely to firms that, look, I just don't want to mess with it. HR is just an overhead cost, and just outsource it so we can get some professionalism in here. I think you'll continue to see people that are not HR be put in charge of HR. A good portion of my colleagues at other companies had no HR background, including some of the biggest companies that you can think of. They were an engineer, or they were in supply chain, or they were in finance, and they moved them over trying to introduce some business acumen into the function. I think that'll continue to go, and some companies will get it and evolve, and others will just kind of stay where they're at and get minimized or outsourced. But it's a very strange phenomenon that's how it works. But that's my perception of it.
Take 2 more questions.
All right, my name is Noah Turner. You've talked a lot about how Honeywell is always trying to kind of evolve itself and stay on top of trends. How do you personally stay on top of how you need to develop and how you need to be aware of what's happening in the company and in the workforce?
Yeah, it's a good question. So in the company, go and see. That's why I travel as much as I do. It's not the same sitting on a conference call, or even if it's a video call where you can see them, and you can hold parts in your hands and look at them and watch videos and listen to people tell you about it, and you still will miss things that you won't pick up on unless you go actually watch for yourself. Go in, watch it being made, watch it being done. Go to a customer. I've been on hundreds of customer visits, some by myself. And normally HR wouldn't even get to ever see a customer, but it's that idea of really understand what happens. What are your salespeople dealing with? What are your business leaders dealing with? Go and see yourself. If it's something where you've got drivers, go on a ride along, spend a day with them, and go on the tech visits, and you just learn an incredible amount. And so it's schedule it and go see things. In terms of me just keeping up in general and advice for all of you, the Wall Street Journal, even if you don't have time to do anything other than read that left-hand column, just so you know what's going on. Oh, somebody bought somebody. And then ask yourself, why would they buy them? Was that a good thing? Was that a bad thing? Do I know why? And try to dig into it a little bit and get some learning. And then the last thing sounds easy, but most people don't do it. It's like talk to people, ask questions. You learn way more by asking people questions than you will reading books or talking to your formal colleagues that are going to screen their answers to you. And I know we're about out of time, but a quick example is when I was in Russia with our CEO, and you ask our employees the questions like, well, how do you like it since the wall came down, and what does everybody think of that? And they kind of give you some filtered answers, and you don't really understand it. Got all the understanding we needed from the driver. We're sitting in the car with the guy driving us, and my boss asks him that question. So what do people think since the wall came down quite a while ago, and how do people look at that? And the driver goes, it's easy. He goes, look at me. This is my car. I own this company. I have 3 other people driving for me too. And I could have never done that in the old system. It wasn't allowed. So this is great. I like this a lot. My parents, on the other hand, hate it. They wish the wall was back up. Their lives are worse. The West promised they would come in with jobs, and they didn't. My parents had jobs when the wall was up. Maybe not a great job, maybe not a lot to live off of, but they always had food on the table, they had a government pension, and everything was taken care of. Now they're in their 60s, they can't get a job, can't get work, their government pension's gone, and they want the wall back up. Wow. There you go. You don't have to read a 400-page book on Russian relations. It's like you got it all right there, and you have a good understanding of how people feel about it. And that was just from asking the person driving us. So I would take advantage of asking people, how did you get where you're at? How would you do things differently? Just talk to people. When you go somewhere, even to one of these meetings, do you just sit by your buddies and talk to them? Or do you find the student from another country that you don't know and go sit down and start talking to them? How do you find America? What's it like? Most people like to talk about themselves. You'll learn far more by doing that than you ever will from reading and Googling things.
One more question?
Dylan Stottle. What would you say, so you kind of talked about some things you can focus on to do. I like kind of talking to other people and whatnot, but specifically for undergraduate, what kind of degrees might you pursue, elective classes? I know I changed my major quite a few times and didn't really know which direction to head, but from an HR or even a business perspective, if you want to pursue something like you, be like in that situation, what would we do? What's a good strategy for an undergrad?
So, I mean, the future is data analytics, the future is automation. That's not going to, no matter who legislates what, that's not going to change that. So the more you understand about that, even if you're not a numbers person, you need to get a fundamental understanding of finance and accounting. You don't have to know enough to close their books for them, but you need to understand a little bit, because things like working capital, so accounts receivable plus inventory minus accounts payable, if you don't understand that and you're an HR person, so you have somebody providing HR services and they finish and then they say, okay, pay us, we finished. Yeah, pay them. They've done the work, they did a good job, pay them. You're doing your company a disservice, because you're going to make cash go out the door faster than it should, and you're not collecting it in fast enough. And if you're a small business owner, you understand absolutely what I'm talking about. If you're running the bicycle shop and you're having to pay for the bicycles and all the parts right away, and your customers aren't paying you for a long time, you're going to go out of business, because you're going to have no cash to make payroll and no cash to order. But in big businesses, everybody's oblivious to that, and they just think, oh, yeah, it doesn't matter, somebody's taking care. So have enough of a fundamental understanding, and you need to understand everything, not just your area. You need to know something about engineering, something about supply chain, something about sales and marketing, something about managing people. The more you can learn to understand the bigger picture of how a business works, the better you'll be at your job, because you just have a better understanding. Where if you're just too narrow, you don't know or care what's going on around you, and some of the decisions you make actually hurt other parts of the business, even though they help your metrics get better. So I would say study things that you really don't know much about. You're thinking, wow, that's kind of an important part of business, and I don't really get it, and it's not what I want to do for a living, but I should at least have a fundamental understanding of it. You're far better doing that than you are going super deep in your specified area. And it'll help you later, too. You're just going to be better because you understand more.
Mark, it's been incredible to be with you. Thank you for sharing your journey and your story and the lessons you've learned along the way. At the Huntsman School of Business, we encourage our students to aspire higher, to think differently about what options and what opportunities they have. As we've learned about your journey, I think we all have been inspired to dare mighty things. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.